So we are live with Consultervation. We are back for another episode today, and I am flying solo in Consultervation this week in the absence of Mr. Swick, who's away on holiday with his family in a marriage in Italy with his daughter. There's a whole shenanigans going on there. And Mr. Swick, who's out in a meeting in London, Mr. Turnbull, who's out in London tonight in a very important meeting. But I am lucky, really, very lucky that that's happened, because I get to spend some time with the extraordinary Tammy Coakley, owner of Spa Bleu and Inspire Blue and proud member of our RLC Legacy team. Tammy, welcome to Consultervation.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me. It's really nice to see you again.
It's been a little bit of a while, isn't it? This last 18 months for everybody's been a bit insane. How have you found the recovery or the stalling or the continuous ups and downs of the pandemic?
Yeah, good question. It's definitely, have to say, been interesting time in our salon spa world, and around the world, of course. We're seeing a lot of people that are really struggling, and I think there's a lot of truth to this after effect. Not that it's even done yet, because we have some new strands and some different things that I think bring on a whole bunch of anxiety for people. But one of our things that we're blessed with in our industry is that we're allowed to physically touch people and make them feel beautiful and talk about wellness. And we're definitely seeing it take a toll, not only on our guests, but our team as well. So as much as we love being back to work and as busy as we are, which is great, we're not going to complain about that, of course. But really, I think what I realize the most is that mental health is a big concern right now for me in my business and my world.
I would agree with you, and I think it's not spoken about enough, ranging from the extremities of well-being. I always think about some of the harrowing headlines of male suicides around the world, and whilst that's not what well-being is entirely all about, it's in the same space, isn't it? It's the same thing. And it's the same for everybody. Now, let's come back into that in a second. One of the things I love about your team is you are, and your spas particularly, own the word guest. You own it. I know loads of people and loads of companies and loads of courses that talk about guests. Your team own that word. What does the word guest mean to you and your team, particularly in the spas, Tammy?
So for us, me personally, I think of the guest as my team as well as our guests. I use the description to the team when we're talking about our guests is that, we want to, envision them walking into our home, and we want to give them the same kind of care and service that you would get when you invite guests over to your house. And I think that way of my team as well. I want them to come into a great environment every day, because ultimately they're in direct contact with our guests, more so than I am some of the time. So I feel like it's really important for my team to feel like they're a guest in our locations and that we're taking care of them, and they can come in and not worry about anything but performing their job to the best of their ability. And then that in turn, they, that does, trickle down to the guest experience. It's about welcoming people and making them feel like you want them there. And while they're with you, giving them, the best service that you're able to give.
So a reason why I want to talk about that first, because it sets a beautiful context, I think, to come back to what you were saying. How are your guests feeling?
Yeah, I mean, I think being in a salon and spa more so, the fact that we can touch people with our hands, they feel comfortable. They feel like they're in a really safe space. And sometimes they'll tell you more than they'll tell their family or their doctors, or I mean, just the conversations that come up are intense. And that can be for our team as well. They feel safe. And so we hear a lot and we see a lot. And I am more aware than ever that people are really struggling. And I don't mean like everyone's on the verge of, um, you know, worst case scenario, but there's a lot of anxiety and I think uncertainty, and our kids are feeling it. And I just don't think that is being talked about enough. And I
So,
have some real
so,
concerns.
so you're answering my next question, which is about how have you noticed the guests being, how different they are before the pandemic. So back in almost what was once normal, right? So a
Yeah.
normal routine business where I'm sure you were focused on guest experience, like you were saying, the next appointment, the next great touch point with one of your guests is the next best moment. But is there a difference? You talked about anxiety there and people struggling. Is there
Hmm.
a difference you've been noticing?
Yeah, I do. I think, one, when they obviously we were missed, I believe, as well, when COVID shut down and we were closed for 3 months, and in some places much longer than we were. We were missed. I think even for ourselves, we realize that not touching people, not being in community with people and contact with people is really isolating. And I think what we realize, like, we're lucky to be back to work, touching people, talking to people all day, but there's a lot of fear still in people. And, we'll still have people coming in saying they haven't had a haircut in a year, or they haven't really left their house because they're working from home. And now they're having like this anxiety about leaving the house. And, it's like, I can't imagine not being in community and touching people and talking to people about personal life, real life stuff, um, for that amount of time. And a lot of people live alone. They might, be older, younger. There's a lot of different situations where some people don't really have any connection with people, other than Zoom or, what going out to dinner, whatever. Yeah, there's a lot of fear, I think, out there, and sadly, I think that the power of touch is powerful.
And
Even not hugging, handshaking,
yeah,
personally, you stopped doing that now. When you're seeing someone that you haven't seen in a long time, you're not necessarily hugging them or handshaking them. Now it's just like, hey, and that's different because I'm a touchy feely person. So, there's a lot of changes that have been made in society.
so in your businesses, how are you managing to retain a very careful word, a level of intimacy? Because I guess even though you're allowed to do those things, the physical contact and the touch point, and I also want to re-emphasize to anyone listening that yeah, I think salons are a space where people might only be going there and in their circle of their life for whatever reason, whatever age they are, and therefore there's a social interaction. I mean, in business we call that coaching,
Mm-hmm.
So you're almost having a social coaching conversation as part of the job, aren't you? And
Yeah.
how do you navigate? How do you navigate the COVID boundaries? And I know they've changed on and off a lot, um,
Mm-hmm.
to make the guest feel safe in that experience. Is there any? What have you learned, I suppose?
Yeah. So, obviously Illinois has its guidelines and we follow those guidelines. We did put some dividers in. Our team and our guests all wear masks still. whether they're vaccinated or not, because some of our team members are not. And so we just really try to do as much. I mean, we do have to be in close quarters, right? So we try to just make that as clean. Obviously, we're cleaning like crazy. We want the guests to feel like when they come in the salon, they're getting our undivided attention and it's a clean space. So, and we try to separate and do all that stuff as much as we possibly can. But yeah, we're definitely taking it serious and trying to maintain, everyone's health.
And again, if you're listening to CONSULTERVATION, I am speaking to Tammy Coakley, owner of Spa Bleu and Inspire Blue, and prime member of our legacy team. And she's walking us through at the moment some parts of her business that have been challenging, like many of us over the last year to 18 months. And we were just really starting to zero in on anxiety and the need to talk about that more. I'm going to come right back to that because today's episode is all about business resilience. And I'd like to ask you, how have you managed to get through it from a business owner's perspective? And then what did you notice your team did to get through it? Because everyone talks about restaurants, Tammy, and there are some fabulous stories about how they re-engineered their businesses, did loads of incredible things, takeout services. I even saw in London last year an ice cream van that was converted into a beer truck, and they were taking beers to people so that people could still have that point type of thing. And everybody talks about these things, but I haven't heard lots of people talk about salons. So talk to me about how you've coped as a business owner, where you had to close, you had to shut down, you had to keep your people employed and reopen again safely. How's it been for you?
Well, I think it's been humbling, really. When COVID hit us, it was definitely not anything that anybody really knew how to navigate. I do have a great leadership team, and team as well. So I think the main thing that I knew what we had to do when this all happened is we had to be there for our team. We had to be flexible. We couldn't, the same guidelines and rules or whatever before had to be put to the wayside, and it really had to be about the person and their life and what they're navigating with kids at home from school and teaching little ones, and they had so much other things that they had to navigate that I felt like the most important thing that we could do as a leadership team is be there for them, be confident in what we were doing, stay updated on all the information that was coming, and provide the information. So good communication with our team, but also just very flexible. Hey, what do you need? Yeah, you can't work Saturdays, okay, or you have to change your schedule so you can be with your kids. Absolutely. Like it had to be about them, and that's really what we did, is we just became more flexible.
That's a huge thing, isn't it? And I love the fact that you've emphasized about focusing on the team and seeing it from the individual's perspective. And I don't know how people did schooling, parents who had young children. I have no idea how they did it. And I don't think it was the same in the States, but over here, there were parents doing schooling who didn't even know the curriculum. And it's not because the parents, were silly. The curriculum is today's curriculum. It's not the curriculum that I did at school or you might have done at school, which clearly was only the other day. It was only the other day, Tammy, right? But so how did your team get through that? Because that's really hard.
Yeah. Well, I think by being flexible and being there for them, it helped them. They weren't worried about their job. They knew they had a job, and they knew that we would be flexible, and we, if someone needed something, we would all work together to make sure that happened. And really, it just became about, taking care of each other in order to take care of our guests. And we knew that that's what we needed to do for our community as well. But I think through that, being in community, you also help yourself. You also being there for other people, it helps you to be more resilient yourself.
It's really interesting, isn't it, to hear you talking about being there for other people? Because I know one of the things that you do, and tell me if I've got the right location, is you're very active, aren't you, in the Boys and Girls Club East Dundee?
Yeah. So, during COVID too, I did realize that, I did have to kind of put everything else to the wayside. Of course, I'm still active in the Boys and Girls Club, but I did step down from the board. But I still support them and try to do as much as I can for them. But there were certain things that I did outside of the salon, and I knew I had to give 100% to the salon right now. So I did step down from a lot of those things, one for clarity, but also two, I just knew that they were going to need me. I knew my family was going to need me. And I had to really make some tough decisions and just, be there 100% of the time available for both. And that's what I did.
And there's a truth I learned many years ago. You can't be the best CEO of somebody else's business. And actually, when you've got your own business, it does need your total attention. And I can completely resonate with that.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier about younger people, and I know you've got a fabulous family. How have your children and their friends coped with some of the challenges of the last year? Because it's been very hard, isn't it, on loads of generations, and at school and social interactions. What have you noticed in that space, Tammy?
I think for my older children, 23 and 21, I haven't noticed as much because they're working, they get out with their friends. I haven't noticed as much as I have with my younger daughter who's in high school.
Okay.
I think there's definitely some adjustments happening right now that they're back in school full time. I would say she's adjusting well. I'm not worried about her, but I definitely have a closer eye on her and her friends, because I do feel like going from being not at school and doing remote and all that stuff, and she's social and has a good friend group and is very active as well. But I still notice some things about her that I do, it keeps my eye on her a little closer, especially when I'm working and she's at home doing school. Not that this is the case anymore, but you think they're fine, but you have to remember that's a lot of alone time for them too, so
yeah.
I have to say, I think they're adjusting well. I just think that there might be some struggles that they're having that we're not aware of. Maybe because they won't tell you, or maybe because they seem fine, you think they're fine. I don't know. I haven't seen any real big red flags, but there's definitely been some concerns. Something to watch out for.
I agree, and I think if I've learned anything, it's to watch out for it, but also to listen from their perspective. The only thing I've learned is that it's such an odd period of history that we're not their age, and it's so easy, isn't it? As young as we both are, Tammy, right? That it's so easy to take all of your combined years of life and apply it to your perspective unintentionally. And if there's something I've learned, and I have to keep reminding myself, is to listen from their view, because their view is unique. It's a historic time, a bit like the really sensitive subjects coming up over the weekend, 20 years of 9/11. People who were going through that, it's a unique experience we can all remember where we were, and I think COVID will have that. This pandemic around our businesses, we'll all remember what happened. But those who are younger, I think we have a responsibility to listen to them, because who knows what effect this will have as they grow into young adults, and the loss of what we all consider might have been a normal upbringing and how radically that changed. So let's look to the future together. What do you have coming up in the next few years that gives a little bit of excitement to you?
A little bit of excitement, huh?
Yeah.
Well, honestly, the next few years, like I said, right now I'm focusing 100% on the salons and want to get us through this time. I have some definite interest in consulting, and I love building brands and working with new business owners. So right now, though, my focus is definitely on growing the salon. I have, put some different systems in place. We just decided to hire on a care team, which some of those struggles with some of the people, with our guests and our team that have been having struggles with anxiety and different things, what we're hearing a lot is that there is no therapy, or therapy, your session would be, a month out. So we did just recently bring on a company that is specifically almost like a first responder for care. So they will call you back within 10 minutes of a call. They'll come in the salon and visit it. They're for the team, for their families, for our guests. We can refer them. So I think that right now is a really important time for for any business owner to show how much you care about your team. Whatever that is, however you can do it. I think they have to be first right now. And other than that, I'm just looking forward to growing the businesses. Eventually I'd like to get some, maybe some shareholders with my team and do some different things like that. But right now we're just really focusing on just getting through this year, really focusing on our numbers and the things that we need to do. And in order to do that, I need my team to be well. So that's where our focus is right now. And our guests, we want to be there for them. Some of them struggle and they need somebody to call. We want to be able to give them that person to call. We can't always be that person. We can be a listening ear, but sometimes you hear things again, and I don't mean to rehash it, but then what do you do with that information? So it's all about wellness right now for our team and our guests. And then growth, looking for some good numbers. We've been, like I said, very busy. We're hiring. We're definitely having a shortage, just like everybody else in the hiring world. So we're continuing to look for great people to be on our team. That's where we're at right now.
Well, I'm really encouraged listening to you today about the energy in your voice, and it's not very often. Maybe we should change the name of the podcast today from Business Resilience to Business Wellbeing, Tammy, because I love the fact that you are really focused on that with your leadership team, taking care of your people to take care of your guests. And I've never heard somebody say about taking on a care service in a salon. That is innovation at its best. And I also love the fact that you have a supplier or a partner that will call people back in need at the moment they need it. And I think that's fabulous. Mm-hmm. That's a tremendous, hopefully, benefit to your community and your guests. That's a great thing. So last question from me, Tammy. If you were to pick a word to summarize yourself at the moment, what word would you choose?
Summarize myself at the moment?
Yeah.
humbled, I guess.
And your reason for that selection is what? And I'm gonna volunteer a word up to you in a second. But what's your reason for saying humbled?
I think just being, having a rough few years prior to COVID, and then COVID gave me a little bit of clarity and some time for rest. And then just being so grateful that I still have a job to go to and have
We lost your sound temporarily there. I mean, you said about being grateful for having a job to go to. Then I lost you for a moment.
I'm just so grateful to have a business that I love. We've been in business 17 years, and I feel just so grateful to have the team that we have. I feel so grateful for my family, my mentors, you being one of them, that helped me through some difficult times. I just feel so grateful and humbled, honestly, that I'm able to do what we're able to do. And I always knew it was important. That's why I got into it, but I don't think I felt it the way I feel it now.
Good. And on that note, I'd like to give you some soul food. And anyone listening who hasn't joined our rlc-global.com community, you can learn all about soul food in there. And you can join us for free. It doesn't cost you anything. But soul food is genuine, positive, and specific feedback. And the word I'd like to volunteer up, and anyone who's listening to this in the playback can decide for themselves. I think in your humility, you've found your heart. You've always had it, Tammy Coakley.
Mm-hmm.
Every time, I remember the first time I met you, you had it then. And it doesn't matter about how tough things are. When your heart is good, your energy is more centered. And the opportunities you bring into your life are much greater. And I've loved listening to your heart today as part of this episode of CONSULTERVATION and learning about how you're caring about other people's hearts by how you're doing work, Tammy. So I'd like to accept you're humbled and offer you heart as a gift.
Thank you. Thank you for the soul food. I always love it.
My absolute pleasure. So you've been listening to Dave Evans here on CONSULTERVATION, flying solo in the absence of Eric and Kevin. Eric, who of course is in Italy at a wedding, and Kevin is in London at a very important meeting. And the thing is, though, today we've been talking about business resilience, but in fact, we ended up talking about business well-being and how Tammy Coakley is making sure her people are cared for so that they can care for their guests, and is going out of her way to care for her guests too. And if you want to know more information, do get in touch with us at info@rlc-global.com. And there's loads of great suggestions from the conversation today with Tammy about ways you can think differently about running your business. So Tammy, it leaves me just to thank you for your time and taking the time out to spend some time with me here today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dave, for having me. I really enjoyed talking with you, and thanks for having me.
My pleasure. It's good to have you on the show. And for everybody else, may I just wish you every success with your learning.